Yes, we've already covered the most recent shit show at Ubisoft, but what if I told you that their biggest problems haven't even started yet? You see, the game cancellations, studio closures, delays, the stock price, all those bad things are, there, they look bad. But Ubisoft's Guillemot-led management fully believe that these are the right course of action. Pain now in favor of more pain later. But you know what they don't know yet? They don't know how the whole creative house restructuring is even going to work, even though it's basically the pillar of their future business. Now, the idea is that they're going to give senior leaders freedom to control their franchises, to build what people actually want and deliver great games. Sounds great in theory. Maybe it'll work. But, unfortunately, multiple senior Ubisoft leaders have sort of left the company in recent months, and one of them is even suing for constructive dismissal. And he is suing them for an utter shitload of money. Let's ground ourselves before we get into the gory details. So, per VGC, Ubisoft is proposing to fire 200 staff from their Paris HQ. That's 18% of their workforce there. That's partially to save money, and partially because, in the new Ubisoft, they're decentralizing leadership to the people running the creative houses. So the idea is that the likes of Vantage Studios, which is the only one of the creative houses that even has a name yet, that they should be able to make their own decisions. Now, the first time that we learned about Vantage's leadership, it was in the form of a softball puff piece about the return of Charlie Guillemot. Yeah, you may recognize the surname there, and the interview was very designed to address concerns around nepotism. And it set the tone for what we could expect from the 4 new creative houses. Now, his co-CEO, Christophe Drenet, was a company man for years. He'd been running Ubisoft North America, and by the way, he's also a cousin, so he is in the family, but that would mean that operationally things would be similar enough. But here's the thing, Vantage Studios is going to be running Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Rainbow Six. Charlie Guillemot, who is now the person creatively running those things, is not someone with experience making those games. And that really does raise the question, where were the people who were in charge of those franchises? And what did the reorg even look like internally? That's where things get really fun. Because as of this month, thanks to the man who refers to himself as, quote, the guardian of the Assassin's Creed franchise, we've now got a pretty good idea. It was a total mess. And I think we know it's a mess because he's suing Ubisoft for 1.3 million Canadian dollars. So if the lawsuit works out, he may be able to afford half of a Canadian home, or perhaps a European castle. But to stay sane through all this, sometimes even I go outside, and that's why I've got a trip to Europa Park in Germany coming up. So I've been brushing up in German. My skill dropped it before I could take it, and I'm genuinely surprised by how much I'm enjoying learning it now with today's sponsor, Babbel. Babbel is an award-winning app that makes learning a new language simple, effective, and crucially, practical. And Babbel courses are built by over 200 language experts with lessons designed around real conversations, not abstract vocabulary that you'll never use. And the bit that matters is the actual course creation, all of that is real human experts. And where AI exists, it's actually useful. It's a conversation partner where I can actually practice ordering food or asking directions, and I can do that based on the place that I'm actually going. That means real practice and getting my reps in. Now, Babbel's got over 25 million subscriptions sold, and 92% of customers improved their proficiency in just 2 months. Now, the goal here for me isn't fluency before I head off to Germany, it's just being able to navigate, order, and handle the basics without having to rely on Google Translate. So to start speaking new language in 3 weeks, go to babbel.com/Bellular and you'll get 55% off your subscription. That's 55% off at babbel.com/Bellular. Per CBC Radio Canada, Marc-Alexis Cote, who I'm just going to call Mac because it turns out that's actually what they all call him at Ubisoft, so we're going to call him Mac. He's the former vice president and executive producer for the entire Assassin's Creed franchise, and he's suing Ubisoft for 2 years of salary and 75 grand in moral damages, totaling 1.3 million Canadian dollars. And he's doing that in the Superior Court of Quebec. Now, he is suing for constructive dismissal after more than 20 years of employment, and Ubisoft haven't responded to the allegations yet, but it is all tied to the creation of this new entity, Vantage Studios. You see, in the summer of 2025, he claims a, quote, head of franchise position was being created at the company, and that this new role would take over most of his responsibilities as VP and EP, that's Vice President and Executive Producer for Assassin's Creed, and crucially, they'd be based in Paris, which, he is not. Now, he claims this was part of Yves Guillemot being opposed to his application because he wouldn't move away from Canada. His new role would instead be head of production, serving under this new head of franchise, which would obviously mean he'd lose the authority to lead and to make deals with partners. As an example, partners like Netflix. So he wasn't really keen. Essentially, the new structure would be a demotion for him. He'd have less responsibility, less influence. Now, in September, they tried to convince him, right? They tried to get him to stay. They offered him leadership of one of the recently revealed creative houses. Though, of course, not Vantage Studios, which kind of notably has Assassin's Creed, the thing that he's been involved with for like 20 years. And all of this went down 2 months after Vantage Studios had its leadership appointed. So basically, he wouldn't run Assassin's Creed, and he would be in charge of a, and I quote, second-tier series. He asked for 2 weeks to reflect on what he framed as, quote, an unacceptable demotion constituting a disguised dismissal, and he asked for severance whenever he was pushed for a response. Ubisoft told him not to come in and to take the 2 weeks as a part of his notice. Then, the next day, Ubisoft announced his departure. They framed it as voluntary, and thus justification for denying severance and enforcing a non-compete clause. He wants that non-compete clause lifted so he can find new work alongside his compensation. It's an overall messy state of affairs, but it does continue Mac's previously stated position that he did not choose to leave, that even though Ubisoft said it was voluntary, that it isn't. But the context here is absolutely key. The creation of the creative houses is seemingly an organizational nightmare for Ubisoft, and this one guy, Mac, is not the only senior leader who walked away. Ubisoft also lost another veteran executive producer in recent weeks, and the implications are that his decision came around the same time. He was a veteran executive producer, and in recent weeks he came to a similar enough decision. Now, his name is Julian Garrity, and he was the executive producer for the entire Division franchise at Massive Entertainment. In total, he had 27 years at Ubisoft, and only a few weekends ago, he was promoting The Division 2's new expansions, the upcoming mobile game, and a potential remaster ahead of The Division 3 launching. And just a few days later, they announced that he had gone to take an unspecified role at Battlefield Studios. And what's notable here is that in October of last year, he changed his LinkedIn role. Now, Massive denied that he was going anywhere at the time, but the timing absolutely aligns with Ubisoft's push to align their studios under creative houses, their whole new business model. It would also align with the pressure being put on Massive to refocus on The Division and to save on costs. Now, in October, Massive began a, quote, voluntary career transition program, needing to refocus after, of course, the sort of cool, maybe a bit frosty reception of Star Wars Outlaws and Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, though of course the new Avatar movie came out, it got a third-person DLC, and it seems that's actually boosted players and sales quite a bit. But anyway, that's not really the point of today's story. The point is, it's another big dog gone, and that gives us 2 instances within a few months of senior leadership on their largest franchises seemingly just choosing to leave. Now, we don't know if Garrity was simply offered a better opportunity, or whether it's a situation like with Mac where he was snubbed for an internal position. The impression you get is that Ubisoft just wants more control centralized in Paris over these creative houses, not less. And, as a part of their press around this whole restructuring, I think Ubisoft may have actually reinforced that. Vantage Studios is ostensibly a whole subsidiary company within Ubisoft, one that, thanks to the 3 brands licensed to it and the investment of Tencent, is worth a hell of a lot of money. It is the big one, though the rest of the creative houses aren't just small franchises, but they are seemingly different to Vantage in at least one key way. Now, as much as it pains me to do this, I'm actually not going to inflict any more pain on the French, so don't worry, I'll just say that this comes from Ubisoft's SVP of Studio Operations and CFO, I maybe won't attempt to do their names, but they spoke to GameIndustry.biz about the new leadership for the remaining creative houses. We won't be finding out about them until just before they start operating in April, but they frame what they expect each leader to be capable of in fairly simple terms, as well as who they want to hire. Here's the quote. "It would be a mix of internal and external candidates, and because the creative houses are organized around specific creative genres, we really want to make sure we have the best talents that are relevant, expert, and specialized for each of them." This is where I cut in and say, is that why you pushed out the Assassin's Creed guy from running Assassin's Creed in favor of Guillermo, who doesn't have Assassin's Creed experience? Interesting. But to get back on script, they basically need people who are capable of handling every genre and franchise under any given creative house's portfolio, not just one series. And I guess that's why the Assassin's Creed guy couldn't just go and run all of Vantage Studios, even though it really seems like they've kinda, cut their nose to spite their face here. But perhaps more importantly, and unlike the Vantage Studios leadership, right now they're being described as, quote, general managers and the leadership team. And I think that, along with specifics of how Mac was offered a leadership position for one of these houses, that it basically suggests Ubisoft are looking for people who will play nice within the new system. Because there's a huge tension between the Ubisoft of today and how these creative houses are supposed to work. You see, these groups are supposed to have, quote, full responsibility and financial ownership led by dedicated leadership teams, giving rise to, quote, decentralized creative organization with faster decision-making. So, in theory, a perfect environment for someone used to running Assassin's Creed and building a multi-year roadmap. But that doesn't matter if Creative House leadership have different ideas than the people who will now be working under them. And that's the bit that will have massive knock-on effects all the way through the company. We're already seeing leaks about low morale, and a hell of a lot of rough things. I can't dive fully into the leaks today. Basically, I just want things to percolate a little bit more so that we get just more of an understanding of what's really going on. But I'll tell you what's interesting, right? In that same GameIndustry.biz interview, their CFO suggests that Ubisoft are now at a historic low of staff attrition, quote, especially for top talent. Now, what I would put forward here is that your eyebrows should absolutely be raising, because, yeah, they may statistically have a historically low level of staff attrition, though those leaks about low morale certainly are something, and I think we should all wonder, is that because right now the industry is basically just holding on for dear life, and the thousands upon thousands of layoffs that have already happened, maybe not a huge amount of new job creation and a really challenging jobs market, meaning that people, even if they're not happy at their current Ubisoft job, will maybe just want to keep collecting their paycheck, because jumping ship sure as hell doesn't look like a safe bet these days. And because of that, let's think about what this means for those people, right? It means the responsibilities of the company's top talent, the people managing the top talent, and even the games that they're working on, well, those things are all about to change. And sure, some people internally could benefit from this, but I think there's going to be more people like Mac, people who see the work they've done not being adequately rewarded despite their loyalty. And I think we may have just seen two very high-profile instances of those experienced people deciding to just leave. That certainly has to sting, and it makes you wonder, what's the selection criteria for the sort of people who will end up taking a job like this? Will they be more of, the yes men? Obviously, there's also external people. They'll come in with no attachment to the structures that existed before, or the people. That could be good, that could be bad. I think the question, though, is whether that top talent can put up with such a severe level of change, and whether everyone else can survive the aftermath of this process. Because while Ubisoft have got a big, bold plan, it seems that some of the top talent they maybe would need to execute that plan well are deciding to go elsewhere. And that's all amidst leaks, rumors, and a lot of talk of morale being extremely low at the company and leadership being rather disconnected from reality. As for now, we just have to see how it goes. I, for one, will put a vote on it being rather messy. And speaking of messy, we've got a big update too. The rather messy, scattered about regulations that are about, dark patterns, microtransactions, a lot of that bad bullshit. They may be about to get a hell of a lot less messy. And a lot of big companies are going to be quite worried, quite alarmed. You can learn about that in this video next.